So the second chunk that we have divided proximate preparation into, we're calling it preparing for partnership. And these are the things, and under this category are the things that you typically think of when you think about marriage prep. These are things that are widely covered once you're already engaged, but like we said, we think it's beneficial to start thinking about these things before you're engaged so that you really have the time to dive into these things and really learn about them, both as a single person, what you can do to grow in these areas so that you'll be a better partner, but also as a dating couple and a seriously dating couple, so that you can learn about these things with your partner and see if the two of you actually make a good fit, if you are each other's spouses, if you'd be able to live a happy marriage. So these are actually things that John Paul listed in the document as necessary for proximate prep. We have taken these directly from Familiaris Consortio. The first one is things that foster the interpersonal relationship of a man and woman that has to be continually developed. So under this category, we are talking about things like communication and conflict resolution and fostering happiness in your relationship. The next thing is stable work and finances. So how do you manage those things? What is the dignity of work? What does that mean? How do you manage personal finance? Those sorts of things. The next thing is conjugal sexuality and responsible parenthood. That is how John Paul phrases it. And conjugal means marriage, so marital sexuality. So what is sex? What does it mean in the context of marriage? How do you bring glory to God with your sex life? That might even be a foreign concept to some of you. So we have some tips for learning about that, learning about God's design for your sexuality, and how you can take this longing, this ache for union with another person and allow it to make you holy. And then responsible parenthood really is keeping sex in its proper context. So both the unitive element, sex is something that unifies the spouses, but it's also procreative, right? New life can be formed from the sexual union. So keeping sex in its context, defining it the way that God does, and learning more about what that means. The next thing is what John Paul calls the medical and biological knowledge associated with conjugal sexuality and responsible parenthood. So we are interpreting that to mean natural family planning, and we want you to study this, or we think that it's necessary and beneficial to study it even before you get engaged, because there's so much that goes into understanding this medical and biological knowledge. So we want to give you more tips on that. The next one is the education of children. This is something that's really not talked about in most marriage preparation programs, which is interesting because most married couples are going to end up being parents one day. So John Paul says, learn about the education of children. So we want to talk about that even before babies are super imminent, right? Even when you're single or dating, what can you learn about raising children? What do you want to bring from your family of origin? What do you not want to bring from your family of origin? What does the church have to say? What does God have to say about raising children? And how can you honor that element of the vow you'd eventually take? And the last one is housekeeping. So this is something, again, that's not really talked about in marriage prep, but we think it's so wise of John Paul to mention housekeeping. He puts it under the category of requisites for a well-ordered family life. And that's true. Like, keeping a home is something that's required for healthy family living. So learning any skills you don't have about keeping a home or housekeeping, home management, homemaking, those sorts of things, that's something you can learn now too. So those are the things that we are putting under the category of preparing for partnership.